Adventure racing is for a special breed of person. Someone with an insatiable thirst for adventure. Not afraid to take on the impossible. And someone not afraid to push themselves to the limit of human endurance. Using only a compass, teamwork and a whole lot of courage, teams of 4 must ride, hike, paddle and navigate their way over hundreds of kilometres, often without any sleep. It's about overcoming fatigue, stress, hunger and sleep deprivation. And if you can keep your sanity, your only reward is finishing a race and knowing you've completed one of the hardest challenges in life. This is not a career for the faint-hearted. This is about testing yourself in one of life's most extreme theatres. Welcome to the Adventure Racing World Championships, staged in the magnificent Shoalhaven region of New South Wales, Australia, where 100 of the world's best teams will compete in Survival of the Fittest Australia. Located on the east coast of New South Wales, Australia, 3 hours south of Sydney, the Shoalhaven region is renowned for its picturesque scenery, its unspoiled beaches and rivers, and its pristine environment. It's a holiday playground drawing visitors from all over the world. The Shoalhaven is also an adventure paradise, and today the region plays host to 100 teams from 40 countries, here to compete in the prestigious world titles. And the race has attracted the strongest field ever assembled. With just hours to study a map, the teams will kayak, trek and ride across 14 stages, with the course stretching 630 kilometres. And if they're still standing, the leading teams are expected to finish in Ulladulla in just under 4 days. It's an extreme challenge that will push the teams to breaking point. Just finishing the race is a challenge within itself. And yet the top teams will race one another all the way to the finish.
There's no other sport like adventure racing. It is everything. Everything that life can throw at you is included in one sport.
Everyday life for me is probably just a little bit too comfortable. I like to get out of the outdoors and rough it. And I think adventure racing is a bit like that too. It's quite primal.
Every race you go back to the same feeling that you were not sure if you're going to be able to cross the finish line.
I don't go into anything, half-hearted, and I've made this sport my life goal and passion.
I love doing it because we can.
With all the training and preparation behind them, over 400 competitors gather on the foreshore of Huskisson for the start of the epic race.
I tell you what, it's quite a build-up and it's great to finally be here. It's exciting and obviously very nerve-wracking. It's 600 and odd Ks and we're going to certainly have a lot of highs and lows.
The beginning of the race is always a bit nervous because we don't know what's going to happen, we don't know how we're going to feel, so the beginning is always, I think, the worst part.
I think we've probably done more World Championships than any other team here between us. It doesn't stop you getting nervous and doesn't stop you getting excited.
I think it's one of the strongest fields ever actually in a World Championship, so yeah, it's gonna be a tough and hard race.
Not only is it the largest expedition race ever, it also has compiled the most competitive teams I've ever seen in an expedition race. I'd say there's 20 teams that are fighting for a top 5 placement.
The teams we most worry about, of course, is Seagate. Everyone should be worried.
Australia and New Zealand have so many good athletes and it's so close for them, so there are many good local teams.
We hope we'll be out there for about 4 days, but those 4 days will feel like sort of 2 weeks. So we'll see, but there'll be a few teams dropping out, that's for sure.
We definitely have the most fierce competition we've seen probably ever, so we're going to step up to the challenge and give it hell.
The first leg is a 35-kilometre kayak around spectacular Jervis Bay, a large harbour dotted with sandy beaches and an abundance of sea life. Everyone is looking to get off to a good start. There are so many skills required to be a leading adventure racer, and pacing yourself over such a long distance is fundamental to success. It isn't long before the local dolphins are out in force to greet the teams, putting on a spectacular display. Early in the race, and already the highly experienced Seagate team from New Zealand moved to the front. With 4 world titles to their name, they're out to show everyone they mean business.
The race start was good for us. We were very comfortable in the boats, and it's probably the easiest way for us to start a race. So yeah, we're just excited to get going. It's a beautiful day, the water looked great. We sort of expected primarily the Australian and South African and Kiwi teams to be towards the front in the paddle, and that was sort of how it was.
If the 35 kilometres isn't hard enough, the South African team Painted Wolf have to contend with a leaking boat.
We were our first or second or third boat, and then we started suspecting that our boat was filling with water, because it suddenly became a lot harder to stay with Seagate and the other teams up front, and it just got progressively harder and harder. And once you've got this nagging thing going on in your mind that you're filling with water, it's you can't get rid of it. We did blow ourselves a little bit in the last hour just trying to stay with the front bunch.
You don't want to have a bad day on day one, because you get behind pretty quickly because everybody's feeling fit and ready to go. So yeah, it was good to get started, and having a big competitive field there is exciting. It means you're always going to have a team next to you to chase or run next to. We were able to paddle with the top group of 5 or 6 teams, and it was pretty hard in the beginning. I didn't think I would be able to maintain that effort, but after 30 minutes, 45 minutes, we settled in, and it was a pretty comfortable paddle for the 5 or 6 hours we were out there.
Adventure racing is all about consistency across all disciplines, and yet for the Columbia team, one of the race favourites, paddling is their weakest leg.
I already had the feeling, okay, wow, that's probably not the one, because of the long distance in kayaking. So we lost the first pack. That was the biggest mistake.
Estonia Ace, one of the leading European teams, loses time early in the kayak.
We took a slow start and slowly started to fall behind the leaders.
The pristine waters of Jervis Bay are teeming with marine life, making a welcome distraction for the weary competitors. Four and a half hours into the race, and it's the Australian team Real Adventure finishing the 35-kilometre paddle in first, with nothing separating Seagate, Adventure Medical Kit and Painted Wolf.
Guys, you need to carry your kayak up the sand. Leg 2, we were feeling good. We got onto our feet. I think I was pretty flabbergasted at the speed of the transitions of Seagate and Adventure Medical Kits. Those guys just came in and went out. And there's a stark difference between the world champions and us. You know, they can make up 2 or 3 free minutes on a transition alone, just by knowing what they're doing.
Transitioning from one discipline to the next is an art form, and it's where the most experienced teams make up invaluable time.
You see the good teams that come into transition, they're in and out in 5 minutes, and it took us 45 minutes just to get ready to go on a trek. So yeah, definitely room for improvement there.
Go into a transition, you've got to be organised, and you go in there, you arrive in, your heart rate's high. You know, later on in the race, you're falling asleep. You're like a drunkard, and you've got to manage so many things, and it's so easy to make mistakes. And 4 people doing it at the same time, with all the right gear, head off in the right direction, and still try be up with the top teams. That's that's where things start to go a bit haywire.
With the leading team setting a blistering pace out in front, the majority of teams enter transition, preparing for leg 2, a 14-kilometre coastal trek. Out in front, Adventure Medical Kit, the leading American team, head off in pursuit of Seagate, with Painted Wolf close behind. Over the years, Medical and Seagate have developed a healthy rivalry, and there is no love lost between two highly competitive teams.
We pushed pretty hard in that short run. We're all good runners on the team, and that course lent itself to probably 90% running. It was mostly on beach or road, and a little bit of rock scrambling here and there. But yeah, we put the afterburners on, and I think made up a little bit of time when we got to the next leg.
Now just over 6 hours into the race, and already fatigue starts to set in. Strong leadership and teamwork will all play their part in the long, difficult days ahead, where individuals will be pushed to breaking point. Seagate is clearly the team to beat. The defending champions are strong across all disciplines, are excellent navigators, highly experienced, and they love to dominate from out in front.
Running on the beaches was quite good fun. There was a lot of banter and joking going on, and same again, you know, the racing hasn't really got underway. The teams are just sort of moving along, really, just ticking off stages. You know, it was nice just to be out and exploring and just having a few laughs with your friends.
The Columbia team may be representing the US, but they have a strong South American influence. Team leader Barbara Bonfin is one of the strongest female competitors in the world and leads by example.
I was personally in that run, I was feeling so well because I live in the altitude now, so I was feeling so strong.
After a poor kayak leg, Estonia ace looked to make up for lost ground on the run leg.
We are good runners, and we picked up the speed right from the start. We saw the other teams in front of us on the beaches and just kept the steady pace. We picked up like 13 teams.
3 teams headed by Seagate and Peak Adventure make their way towards Transition 3.
We're going for a little paddle now, and then we'll be biking all night till it gets light, I suppose. It's always a bit faster at the start of the race, but hopefully we'll settle down on the bikes.
The next stage is a 13-kilometre paddle across Georges Basin towards Sussex Inlet. With light fading, everyone is looking to consolidate their overnight position.
2 legs down, 12 to go.
Adventure Medical Kit are just off the pace and desperate to keep the 3 leading teams in check. Swedish Armed Forces and Painted Wolf are also in the lead group. Meanwhile, there's a great battle unfolding between the Columbia team and Estonia Ace.
In the second kayaking, we knew better what to do. We were towing each other, and then there was the Estonian team passed, and we could draft with them, so we just saved energy, so it was fine.
We were in a very good racing mood, and the next kayak that was on flat water, that one went very well for us. We caught already some good teams like Columbia. We're in the top 15.
Just over 8 hours into the race, and as expected, Seagate make their move, opening a small gap over the field, with only Peak Adventure staying in touch.
Leg 3, we had a short kayak, and we actually found ourselves with a bit of a gap there, which we hadn't sort of planned or gone for, but we thought, oh well, we're out in front, we'll just carry on doing our thing. Then we transitioned through to bikes, and then we had a reasonably long ride into the night.
The next leg is one of the longest in the race, a challenging 95-kilometre bike ride during the night. It's a leg that's also expected to test navigational skills.
It's just nighttime ride.
you're sometimes a bit tired, and you've got to take care that you get it right. That's the key. It's early in the race, as so much can happen tonight and numerous nights, so we'll just try and keep it tight and keep it on track.
Seagate deliberately sets a rapid pace out in front, with the speed starting to take its toll.
This race has been really fast so far. We've been gunning it, you know. This has been a 24-hour race pace. Everybody's jockeying for position, and you know, it's a long race. We're still early on, and we're happy with where we are. We're still within, you know, firing distance of those guys, and we're in a really good spot, and we just want to keep a smart race going.
The first night is always a bit of an adventure, get out there, but you're feeling good. You know, you've got plenty of food on board, and you know, we were leading at that point, and there was a few route choices on the bike though, so we weren't going to be surprised if you know, other teams took a different route choice and came out in front of us.
Up until now, the navigation has been relatively easy, but the more difficult technical section ahead will come to test the weaker navigators during the night.
The adventure race really starts at night time. 1:40 of the first night, and we'll come to a section that is called Hike a Bike. And there's a lot of teams, and there's a queue because it's just so hard to get up these cliffs.
Home ground advantage proves of no assistance to the Australian team, Peak Adventure, as they get hopelessly lost during the night and fall well back in the field. For the South African team, Painted Wolf, leg 4 proves to be a disaster.
The first overnight leg on the bike was an absolute shocker for our team. Before you knew it, we did 6 kilometers extra before we found the checkpoint. First mistake. By this stage, a lot of the teams from the mid-pack had started to catch us, and the pressure just builds. And this is where you've got to manage. You manage what you can manage, and you don't get into that panic mode where you're forcing things. But then we slowly started getting back to basics and climbing the field again, only to make another mistake and do another extra 6 kilometers. So from being in like 4th position or something, we were down to 26th position. I could tell you that the wind was completely taken out of our sails.
After a frenetic night of bike drama, Seagate surfaces at dawn, unscathed, and now with an 11-minute lead over arch rivals Adventure Medical Kit. With no sleep and the pace unrelenting, the two powerhouse teams look to break free from the rest of the field.
Leg 5 was a great stage along the coast, beautiful beaches. Sunrise came up through there, lots of wildlife. You know, we're running past lots of kangaroos and scattering them around, and that was the first time in the race where we decided to just put a bit of pressure on, I guess, just speed up a wee bit and just get a sense of what teams are going to be around. When you try to win these races, it does come down to a little bit of, you know, they who can suffer most win. Well, ideally what we're trying to do is gain a bit of a lead so that we can stop and get some sleep and then retain the lead. It puts you in a very powerful position.
The run was spectacular. I'm not the biggest fan of running on sand, so if we're doing that, we better have some good views and some good rock hopping opportunities. And we were at the beaches where, you know, the classic kangaroos on the beaches at the perfect time, sun up, and they're really, really active.
Just when Adventure Medical think they've got second place all to themselves, Swedish armed forces appear out of nowhere to join them.
We started that coastal trek in second, thought things were going great. There was some route options, and we got past. Saw a team come out of the woods, and we weren't too happy with that. We figured they probably had a better route choice.
After a 38-kilometre trek and now 22 hours into the race, Seagate enters Transition 5 at Bateman's Bay, preparing for the next stage, which is a 37-kilometre kayak paddle. The gap over Adventure Medical is now a commanding 39 minutes.
You always get a bit of a recharge when it comes daylight again. We sort of did put a bit of pressure on this stage really, just when we were feeling okay, so we thought, oh, we might as well push it a wee bit and just kind of see how the teams behind sort of cope with that.
Adventure Medical Kit has lived in Seagate's shadow for many years, and they know they can't let them get too far ahead if they're to have any chance of beating them.
Yeah, he punched the passport.
39 minutes. Thank you very much.
Ready to get off our feet for a few hours, and still moving well. A lot of race left. We got Swedes are hot on our tail, and I'm sure several other teams, so it's definitely not locked in, and anything can happen. We can still move up in first.
Race strategy will play a critical role going forward. At some stage, the top teams will have to stop for sleep, and it will open the race right up. The Estonians have a strong orienteering tradition, and it's a strength they'll need to draw on to keep them in the hunt.
We have been moving up quite unexpectedly. We started out like on the 30th place after the first battle, so now we're way up. But it's just the beginning. It's not even. It's about quarter of the race done, so and less than 24 hours. So.
For Painted Wolf, the race proves frustrating, and it's simply a case of 2 steps forward, 1 step back.
We started to make up ground, and we could feel it. And we were constant again. We weren't pushing ourselves. We kept ourselves in a comfortable pace, and we thought, let's just chip away at it. And we made another navigational error and ended up getting stuck in thick swamp. And again, devastating. You know, I mean, just one blow after another.
The race continues to play havoc with a highly experienced UK team, Godzone, forced to withdraw following a nasty fall. The Swedish team Thule are also in the wars, with Martin Flinter breaking 3 ribs.
Is you the doctor?
Yeah, I'm medic. Yeah.
Okay. You can just see if what you think about.
What happened?
I got hit by the kayak when I flipped. It was like a knife for every stroke.
Okay. That one?
Yeah.
How bad's that?
Yes, it's really bad.
Have you taken any painkillers?
Just now, 20 minutes ago.
Yeah. I don't think you've punctured a lung. I think you'd be struggling to breathe if you punctured your lung.
But you think it's broken?
If the pain is quite severe, then it's a good chance it is.
Incredibly, despite a serious injury and in real pain, Flinter doesn't want to let the team down, and ignoring medical advice, decides to soldier on. Now, late in the afternoon on day 2, the team set off on leg 6, a 37-kilometre paddle up the Clyde River. Now over 200 kilometres into the race, and with no sleep, fatigue starts to take hold.
It was quite hard at times. You know, we were really sure we had a current against us in some of the river, so it was quite hard work.
We were going against the current for quite a while, but it's a mental thing at that point. You can get really frustrated, realize you're going too slow. But a lot of the tidal differences, you know, it's going to benefit some teams, hurt others. The most important thing is you want to be around your competition so they're experiencing the same conditions. So we kept the hammer down there. We really never let up.
Again, Painted Wolves show exceptional boat speed to move through the field.
We caught one team that we were paddling a bit stronger than, and that was Colombia. Passing a world-class team and feeling stronger than them on the water is a big thing. So much of the sport takes place in the mind, and something happens subconsciously when you take a team that controls your energy levels, your strength. And we said to ourselves, let's just keep it together.
Seagate finished the paddle in a time of 27 hours 42 minutes to extend their lead over Adventure Medical Kit. With no rest for the weary It's now time for a difficult 58-kilometre overnight bike ride. Sleep is on everyone's mind. It becomes a very strategic decision: when, where, and for how long.
Oh, we'll have a sleep at some point. I don't think we've decided quite when. Probably the next leg.
Our sleep strategy was to get a decent sleep before the mountain trek, before stage 8. So we just figured that we would just push through to there and we were comfortable with that, and then have a decent stop and just freshen up for the mountain really. We just wanted to sort of attack that mountain stage in as best condition as we possibly could. Right, we're away.
Adventure Medical finished the kayak in 42 minutes behind Seagate, and despite 2 days without rest, are prepared to sacrifice sleep in a desperate effort to catch Seagate.
The next bike ride was a fairly crucial leg of the race. Yeah, it was going into night 2, which is typically the time teams need sleep, should take sleep. And we didn't want to sleep beforehand. We wanted to get to the next TA and get our rest, so we didn't want to have any sleep monster navigation mistakes.
You got your tracker, Eric? My tracker's on my backpack, Kate.
Did. We got the yellow brick?
Yeah, I got the yellow.
Incredibly, despite carrying a passenger, Thule continue to race in the veiled hope that their injured warrior will somehow come good.
He didn't pedal a stroke, so could have been better, but we'll try. We don't give up yet. You know, this race starts tomorrow night. After 2-3 days, last night everything happens. It's the death night.
Despite it being a World Championship race, sleep is now the #1 priority.
Before we went into the race, we actually self-imposed our own mandatory sleep, which was 8 hours. So we basically agreed that we wanted to sleep for 8 hours in the race.
In this sport, sleep is a weapon. And if you can use your weapon effectively, it can give you enormous strength.
It's all a gamble. I mean, the way you look at it is you want to sleep as little as possible to still move fast, not make navigation mistakes, and win.
Different teams have different strategies of racing, right? Some of them, like Seagate, push super hard so they can stop and sleep, right? Because we don't have that physical strength, maybe we could train a little more to have it. But anyway, so if you don't go as hard, you don't feel like you have to stop and rest. So that's what we did. In this case, we could go slower and not feel like we had to stop and sleep.
There's nothing harder in this sport than just trying to keep your eyes open when all you want to do is lay down and rest.
The French are the first to succumb to the temptation of rest.
We were the first team to take a sleep before these sections. It was not an easy choice because we finished kayaking and it was not the night, but we decided to stop an hour.
The 58-kilometre bike leg proves testing with lots of undulating terrain and challenging navigation. The race casualties continue to mount, with Yearlands from New Zealand and Merrill adventure addicts from South Africa both damaging equipment and pulling out overnight. Seagate finished the leg in 6.5 hours, and now 34 hours into the race decide it's time for a power nap, creating a huge opportunity for Adventure Medical Kit to pounce.
We came into the next TA looking forward to getting a good rest before we started the next leg, which was most likely the crux of the race, which is typically the longest, hardest, most mountainous trek. Got a good 2 hours rest. Seagate took a 3 hours rest, so they were only starting that leg just 20 minutes ahead of us.
We got to that transition and we saw teams like Estonia leaving and the AMK leaving, and all of them had stopped to sleep, but we knew that we couldn't because we had to make up that ground.
Despite 38 hours of non-stop racing, the Colombian team decide their only chance of victory is to ignore sleep, and it's a brave decision.
I've heard a saying that never go over 36 hours without sleep. And so We got into the transition. I didn't even see that the Seagate was there still sleeping, but we opted for a 90-minute sleep. It started raining, so we just got up and got ready to go. And then at that brief moment, we were the leaders of the competition because Seagate was still sleeping.
Sleep deprivation can be a dangerous game, but for the Estonians, the sacrifice has huge reward.
I don't think there is many teams that had the experience of leading world championships before Seagate at 36 or 40 hours.
Such is the dynamic, fluid nature of adventure racing. Estonia's lead is short-lived when they stray well off course.
The brief moment of lead ended quite quickly.
So the course setter has made a very hard task.
We had to find the track going up the mountain. It was very slow because there was a lot of undergrowth and a lot of stones, like some of them 10 meters big. It's
quite steep hill.
It was really, really hard.
So it's 6:24 and we've been making our way up here for four hours through this very, very thick brush.
And when we made it finally up, we found out that we lost 3 hours to the teams that found the track.
It's now day 3 of the World Championship race, with the leading teams now entering Morton National Park with a 58-kilometre trek, the longest leg of the race. After a cold, wet night, the teams are faced with hot, humid conditions as they trek through a rugged mountain range. Seagate's had another strong night and, despite stopping for a 3-hour sleep, managed to regain the lead and are now pushing the pace.
Navigation is a big part of adventure racing, and if the course is set well, there should be plenty of navigation challenges to test the team's ability to sort of move through countryside. And this race had some really unique navigation challenges, you know, just with what was on the map and what was on the ground, and just staying on the right route.
It's a superhuman effort. The Colombia team defy logic to race 3 days without sleep, and as a result, move into second place.
Usually those teams who have been racing against us over the years should know that this hard navigation tracking, they should watch. That's when we do the magic, because Utsi is a world-class navigator, and like few other ones here, right? I would say Chris Forn is just amazing too. And we are capable of just passing other teams without them even knowing.
In adventure racing, you can have the best athletes on the planet, but they're nothing without strong navigation.
Seagate is the best team in the world because of Chris Forn's navigation. He doesn't make mistakes, he knows how to read a map very well. That's the #1 reason.
My sense of direction without a compass is fairly poor, but yeah, you just got to sort of, I guess, out there make the best choices, and you know, you don't always get them right. The challenge is to try and make as well-informed decisions as possible, which I guess comes with a bit of experience, and you know, you still definitely not get them all right, but hopefully, you know, manage to deal with problems when they do arise and reduce them, I guess. Yeah.
Going into the sport, you're in the furnace there. It's high pressure, it's hot, and the other guys are relying on our decisions as navigators to save them energy, to keep the team going forward. They don't know what's going on in our minds. We can't explain to them, you know, that I'm looking at a blank piece of paper trying to find a hole in the ground this size. Yeah.
Now 272 kilometres into the race, and with a 2-hour lead, Seagate take time out to cool down and regroup.
There's a pretty stunning trek up there, but it's got a bit of a sting in the tail here. It's sort of a run out and pretty hot under the sun, and I've just got a couple of sore toes after that trek, which is a bit disappointing, but they'll come right.
Despite a 2-hour gap, Adventure Medical Kit hasn't given up yet. But with Kyle and Eric Sanders both suffering from sore feet, fatigue will be their biggest obstacle.
Today was a bit hot. Yeah. We found some classic Aussie bush, ripped up the legs some, feet were sore. really sore. Looking forward to finishing up this trek. Made a bit of a mistake this morning. I think we went off onto a side track, and then we were just parallel of the real track and had to push through the bush for an hour and a half. Like thick, slow bush and vines. And yeah, keep a positive outlook, stay motivated, because anything can happen.
Seagate completes leg 7 in 50 hours, and despite all the pain and suffering, are content with their effort to date. With a 2-hour gap over Colombia, they now prepare for a 70-kilometre ride to Bungonia. Despite no sleep, the Colombia team are in good shape, and they refuel, confident they can bridge the gap to Seagate. Meanwhile, Eric Sanders limps into transition in a world of pain.
All I could do is sit here for an hour and let these things dry, but that's not going to happen. So, I mean, I'm going to put dry socks on, I'm going to put my bike shoes on and keep going. Everybody gets maceration and adventure racing. It's not something new. It's not something that's particular to me. Like, Mary's got it, Kyle's got it, everybody's got it. Maybe my case is a little bit worse right now, but I've gotten it in many of the ARs I've done. You know it ends. It's the only reason that I get through it.
During the night, the leading Australian team Shots Sport Nutrition make up 6 places to move into 4th position.
I think we started that trek in around 10th or something. We checked out. So we've passed a few Estonians who took off at 2 o'clock this morning just behind us. So they couldn't find the trek up the big hill, and they reckon they did the World Champs in Brazil last year and reckons it was worse than that. So where we just bounced up the hill, sort of. It was a good hill.
Despite losing a temporary lead, Estonia Ace Adventure manages to consolidate 5th place.
Pretty good considering minor problems. But with adventure racing, you have to swallow this, and anything can happen. So I think we're in a good position in top 10. So happy.
Now just happy to be off their feet, Adventure Medical head out in pursuit of the 2 leaders. They know Colombia has to rest at some stage and are ready to pounce.
The next bike ride was basically a commuter route to get us to the cool caving area. It was mostly flat, all paved roads. Rob got hit hard with the sleep monsters there, so we were working hard at keeping him alert.
Incredibly, after 57 hours of racing, the Colombia team still hasn't slept.
I was starting to feel this sleep deprivation. We had not stopped at all until then, and I said, hey, we really need to stop a little. So we stopped for an hour on the side of the road, kind of hiding. For me, it was good, but the guys were not happy with me because I gave the idea, and then after we got back to biking, right after this stop, they were not feeling well. So they said it didn't work and we lost time. Like, that's what team is, right? Sometimes you're going to be happy, sometimes you're not going to be happy.
Despite a slow start, the leading Australian team has come roaring back into contention.
We're on cloud 9. We were absolutely stoked. We're in 4th and the leaders aren't that far in front.
Meanwhile, Seagate arrives at leg 10 for the caving.
Are these little red things where the controls are?
Yes, and they're not marked on your map. So all of this information you need to mark as you see fit.
Yep. Cool. Right, so we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so that's all our caves.
With a lead of almost 2.5 hours and with the advantage of daylight, Seagate decides to take their time studying the maps. Everyone believed the caves would be easy, but it proved anything but.
This is 35.
Even the highly experienced Seagate team struggled to find the checkpoints in the dark, confined caves.
Here it is.
You got it.
Cool. Nice. It's made a bit tricky to find.
This was the most difficult, wasn't it?
Yeah.
The ratings.
It's highly technical, time-consuming and claustrophobic. Adventure Medical Kit arrive with Seagate still in the caves. To everyone's surprise, the Columbia team is nowhere to be seen at the caves, and their whereabouts is a real mystery.
Got to the caves and we were really surprised to learn that we checked in second. So we had passed Columbia on that paved ride. We never saw them out there. We weren't sure where they were. And we had an original plan of sleeping for a couple hours at the caving. So this plan worked out really well.
Columbia finally arrives in third position, but like everyone else, is soon in trouble.
We had this in mind that we could do super fast, but in 2 hours we had done just one cave. So I said, oh, we're losing the race here completely. And then in that moment we made a mistake and we lost over an hour looking for one of them that was not the compulsory one.
In retrospect, I should have taken a 10-minute sleep for the team just to refresh slightly, because we didn't. We went straight into this caving section. Complicated orienteering. Anyone with a slight bit of claustrophobia, this was hardcore caving. Our team basically melted down in that caving section. We were shouting at each other. We were swearing, calling each other names. It was one of the most testing things I've done in the sport. I think we took 5.5 hours to do the 5-hour. So we were well behind the curve then.
The caves prove a source of great frustration, and despite an impressive move through the field, the strong Australian comeback grinds to a crashing halt.
I think we hold the record for the longest time out there. We'd also banked on having a couple of hours sleep there, but because we did such a bad leg, no sleep.
After 60 hours of racing and with 410 kilometres completed, sleep is now the common enemy. By the time they exit the caves, Seagate's lead has been reduced to just over an hour, with Adventure Medical Kit closing in.
So after we've completed the caving, we had another 3 hours sleep and then sort of got ourselves ready for I guess essentially the last part of the race really. If teams come at us, you know, we've got other gears we can change into.
With 4 legs and 217 kilometres still to go, the race is starting to heat up.
We weren't sure how far ahead Seagate was, but the next leg of pack rafting had a 3-hour trek down to a large gorge and then some massive boulder hopping.
Despite a disastrous period in the caves, Painted Wolf hasn't given up just yet and are confident they can make up lost time.
That is our ground. That is where we as a team come together. We flew down there. We took Team Istana down there, and we were feeling good.
We'd heard, you know, a few people say to us that you're going to be blown away by the scenery down in the canyon, so we're looking forward to that, and we're down there in the daytime, which is really a real bonus.
Now late on day 3, and the leading teams make their way down the magnificent Shoalhaven River towards Kangaroo Valley. As they reach the closing stages of the race, the field starts to tighten, setting the race up for a dramatic finish, with less than an hour now separating first and second.
At any point in the race, things can go wrong. There's bike mechanicals, people could get injured, people can be pushing on low sleep. I mean, there's so many factors that you should never count anybody out or think anybody has a sure win at any point. 1 hour, that's one navigation mistake. That's one penalty for a forgotten piece of gear. Yeah, totally in the race at this point. Seagate's strength is paddling, our weakness is paddling. So whenever we're comparing our times there, we're lucky if we only lose 30 minutes or an hour, but here we're maintaining.
Columbia in third continue to survive on limited sleep in a desperate effort to catch the leaders.
We know how to suffer, so we knew that, for example, the longer in the race, the better we feel, and then there are less teams that are capable of hanging on, you know. So we knew that the teams that coming, they could do, they could pass us, but they were suffering too,
And how are you guys feeling? I know you're running on fumes.
Oh, everyone is feeling that, yeah.
Incredibly, after a 44-kilometre pack raft, the teams have to endure another 56-kilometre kayak paddle, meaning over 20 hours of non-stop paddling.
We started to catch sight of Colombia. So at this stage, we've made our way into the top 5. Given the chaos that we had had in this race, we were very surprised to be there. And we knew now with another 50-kilometre paddle coming up, I mean, unbelievable that you know, to try and get your mind around what you've just done 40 kilometres on the water, and you can do another 50. But you know, however bad it's going to be for us, it's going to be worse for them. And at some stage, we saw them pull off for a sleep. So we knew by then we had moved up into 3rd place. And then our battle started. Against the headwind, spray, middle of the night, freezing cold. You're going through hours of your life, you know, living from second to second. Basically, it's ridiculous.
Now in the closing stages, Seagate exit the kayak exhausted, but knowing that victory is within grasp.
I think it's freaking heavy, isn't it? Hello.
In a calculated move, they decide to take a short sleep. But it's a very risky decision, with 2nd and 3rd closing in.
Even though the teams behind us weren't that far away, we figured that we'll grab an hour's sleep and we just wanted to do the ride and not make mistakes.
82 agonising hours into the race, and Adventure Medical finally catch Seagate at transition. It's a defining moment, and despite sheer exhaustion, it adds new life to their campaign.
To see Seagate in the TA is exciting, but we knew we need sleep. They just finished their sleep. So they left about 5 or 10 minutes before us. Again, still optimistic that anything can happen.
Despite a sleep-deprived Hayes, the tenacious Colombia team in 3rd never give up.
We knew that the race was open still because it was a long bike. We're not sure how much navigation there would be, but it takes one silly mistake for one to be kind of out of the race. We're battling against the sleep deprivation too, right? So many times we had to be like help each other. And then at the end, we saw that some teams were coming, you know, we saw them. So we pushed so hard.
Painted Wolf joined Colombia in transition, and with the French team also finishing fast, the battle for the world title remains intense.
We saw Colombia again, we saw Naturex, so we knew there were quite a few teams around us. But as we left that transition, we saw another team paddling in, so we knew there were teams around us. So we figured anywhere between 4th and 9th. So we were quite worried. We were struggling to keep competitive.
As if Seagate didn't have enough on their plate, their world title aspirations are almost undone on the final stretch.
We were really lucky on the last stage. We had a wombat run out and basically run between us when we were biking at quite a high speed and brought Joe down and just collided with her front wheel. And she hit the ground probably doing 40, 45 k's an hour, broke her helmet, and luckily didn't break her bike or break any part of her. So yeah, that was a little bit of a concerned moment there for a while. It's not nice when you turn around and see your teammates all scattered across the road, but luckily small delay and we're going again.
Finally, 92 hours into the race, and for the first time, Seagate can relax, knowing victory is within reach, and only a complete breakdown can stop them from here. Despite all the pain and suffering, it's a chance to enjoy the moment.
Once we put the bikes away, we knew we'd won the race. So it was really just time to enjoy and savour, you know, the win really. And yeah, we're on our way to the finish line, so you know, everything's good.
With the final leg, Seagate had put some time on us, and that, you know, goes to show their more sleep made them faster on that ride. Seeing us in that TA gave them a bit of a scare, and I think they put the hammer down.
We knew that the other teams were not going to catch us, so we kind of relaxed a little, I think. We're just like kind of, you know, just cruising and having a good time.
Had any sleep?
We look like we did.
10 minutes today. How much overall in total duration?
Less than 2 hours.
Yeah, now we're over 30, 1 hour 40.
45.
Yeah. But you do it all again.
Oh yeah, over and over.
Once again, it's the New Zealand team Seagate proving why they're the undisputed champions of the world, finishing the race in a time of just over 95 hours. With strong teamwork, strategy and consistency across all disciplines, it's a brilliant display of expedition racing.
When I cross the finish line, it's always such a great sense of relief, just that the race is over and that you've achieved the goal that you wanted to achieve. I think for a long time in the race, we felt pretty confident we would win, but until you actually cross the line, it's just an unknown. So yeah, I think it's a mixture of celebration and relief.
Adventure Medical puts in a brave performance, shadowing Seagate right across the Shoalhaven, but in the end, are forced to settle for second.
First thought when you hit the finish line is definitely a relief because you could stop moving and pushing so hard. It's really nice to stop when you hit that finish line and just relax.
The Columbia team can be proud of their efforts, finishing just 2 hours behind Adventure Medical Kit to take third place.
For us, I would say this time was even more special. We had a very difficult year, so for us it was a great achievement.
With the podium positions decided, another dramatic race was starting to unfold between 4th and 5th.
We come down onto the beach, one more transition to get, and we look up to our right and we see a team running there, and we think they've caught us. And then we recognize the blue cap. These are the guys we've been racing against the whole way. This is the French team, Naturex, and they've only seen us, so they haven't been running, obviously. And we start racing. There you go! And we get onto these final tracks and we start sprinting. And we're doing a 650-kilometer race, and you're coming into the last kilometer at 4 minutes a K. Sprinting along there, it's just ridiculous, and I just thought this is not happening. I'm feeling the worst I've ever felt, and I'm in a sprint for 4th place for the World Championships. And we're tripping over each other, we're shouldering each other, it's just absolutely crazy. And it's only till we get to the last sight of the finish line, looking down, and we can actually see there's the finish line there, and suddenly they just weren't there anymore.
Jesus, what a finish! In an amazing finish, Painted Wolf beats Naturex by mere seconds to take 4th position. It says everything about the competitive nature of adventure racers and their never say die attitude.